It's the Gear Tester here, and in this video I'm going to compare some of the differences which I've found in the Glock Gen 3 family of handguns versus the Glock Gen 4 handguns. Stop! One of the things that I want to make clear at the beginning of this video is the fact that I have found both Glock Gen 3s and Gen 4s to be very reliable and very accurate for me as I have shot them and used them. They're great handguns, so I'm not trying to argue that you pick a Gen 3 or you pick a Gen 4 here. I just want you to know the differences, recognize the differences, and for that to inform your decision if you're thinking about purchasing a Glock pistol for the first time and you're wondering, should I buy a Gen 3 or buy a Gen 4? Glock is currently producing both Gen 3s and Gen 4s new from the factory, so you can purchase a new Gen 3 or a new Gen 4, but you may want to know some of the differences. I'm going to focus primarily in this video on external differences that matter to me, the end user, in terms of the way the pistol operates in my hands and some of the functions that the Gen 4s have versus the Gen 3s. The first and most obvious difference between Glock Gen 4s and Glock Gen 3 pistols is the stippling on the grip. And you can see here on this Glock 26 Gen 4 that the texture or stippling on the grip is very aggressive. On the Gen 3 pistols, you can see that this pistol is smoother, that there is not as much texture there. And I personally like the Gen 4 texture better than the Gen 3. But having said that, I've never dropped either kind of pistol, whether that's a Gen 3 or a Gen 4, while shooting it and using it. Okay, so from a practical standpoint, there's probably very little difference in terms of the texture of the grip. Okay, I do prefer the Gen 4 texture. However, one of the reasons that I prefer the Gen 4 pistols personally is the fact that the grips on the Gen 4s are actually slightly smaller. They're slightly thinner on the Gen 4s than the Gen 3s. And because I have relatively small hands, well, actually my palm is very broad and my fingers are very short, I find that the Gen 4 pistols are more comfortable in my hand. So let me demo that for you here. Okay? Here's a Glock Gen 3, and you can see I'm trying to touch my thumb and my middle finger together. And I can almost make them touch, but I can't get them all the way there. On the Gen 4 pistols, they actually shorten the overall dimensions of the grip. So if I do that same test here, I'm able to definitely touch my thumb and my middle finger together. And so that's an important reality for me personally. So the combination of the increased texture on the Gen 4s and that smaller grip, for me personally, causes me to like the way that the Gen 4s feel. Now, Gen 4 pistols come with some spacers, and so I've never taken these out of the package because I didn't want my grip to be larger. These go with my Glock Gen 4 19. You can see, and so the first spacer is going to get it closer to the Gen 3 overall grip size. So if you're a Gen 3 guy, you've fired and shot Gen 3 Glocks a lot, and you get a Gen 4, the first spacer is going to allow you to get it closer to the overall size as your standard Gen 3 pistols, and then the second spacer is going to make it even bigger if you have larger hands. Another noticeable difference between Gen 3 and Gen 4 pistols is the magazine releases. Okay, so if I compare these for you, you can see here on this Gen 4 that the magazine release is larger, okay, than on this Gen 3. From a practical standpoint, I've never had a hard time dropping my magazine with either a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 and reloading the pistol effectively. So to me, there is a difference there, and you should be aware of it, but that difference is not significant. Now, if you're a left-handed individual, Gen 4 pistols may be more attractive to you because the magazine release is actually reversible. So you can actually switch it. It takes just a couple minutes. It's very easy to do. You just disassemble the pistol and switch this over, making the pistol more effective for left-handed shooters. So that is one difference you should be aware of, and that might cause a person that's left-handed to prefer the Gen 4 family of pistols. So far, I've talked about external differences when it comes to Gen 3 Glocks and Gen 4 Glocks. Now I'm going to talk about an internal difference that actually matters to me. There are differences when it comes to the Gen 4 pistols and the Gen 3 pistols when talking about the recoil spring guide rod assembly. And this is the component that rides right here inside the gun. It's a rod and it has a spring on it, and it's what causes the firearm to reciprocate appropriately when the small explosion, which is the detonation of the round, goes off. Okay, it's what gives your slide the power to pop back into place. As a rule, those are not interchangeable when it comes to comparing Gen 4 pistols and Gen 3 pistols. That's important to me because I choose to have replacement parts in stock at my home, and I'd like to have the fewest number of replacement parts that work in the greatest number of my firearms. And so if you have a Gen 4 19 and a Gen 3 19, they're going to need a different component. Let me show you that component. This is the recoil spring guide rod assembly. So we've got the guide rod here, and then we've got the springs on it. In the Gen 4 pistols, Glock upgraded to a dual recoil spring. Not only that, but it changed some of the dimensions here on the back and here on the front of the recoil springs. So you cannot use the same recoil spring in Gen 3 19s and Gen 4 19s, if that makes sense. So the way in which it interfaces here with the barrel is different, and then the cut in the slide when it comes to most Gen 4 pistols is actually larger. So they're not interchangeable. Now these are $15 parts, so you're talking about spending some more money. You're going to spend another $15 or $16, so you have a replacement Gen 3 and a replacement Gen 4 if you're running different pistols or different generations of pistols. So you have two 19s or two 17s, but one that's a Gen 3 and one that's a Gen 4. So in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge problem. But again, you're having to stock additional components. There is an anomaly or a break in that rule when it comes to the Glock 26s. So I've got a Glock 26 Gen 4 here and a Glock 26 Gen 3 here. But their components are actually the same. The reason for that is that Glock had already incorporated a dual recoil spring in the Gen 3 family of pistols when it comes to the 26s and the 27s. So 9mm pistols, the 26s, and 40 Smith & Wesson pistols that are the 27. So they'd already incorporated a dual nested recoil spring in the Gen 3 family of pistols when it comes to the Glock 26s and the Glock 27s. What that means for you, if you're thinking about purchasing these pistols, is that these components, both the barrels and the guide rod spring systems, are compatible with one another. And that's actually why I own a Gen 3 Glock 26. Because I was able to purchase it, and I was able to, before I purchased it, make sure that all the components were the same. So both the barrels, okay, and the guide rod springs will work exactly the same in those pistols. Those are the differences I think you should be aware of. Those are the differences that matter to me. The stippling, I think, is better on the Glock Gen 4s. The overall circumference of the grip is thinner in the Gen 4s. The magazine releases are reversible in the Gen 4s, and the recoil spring guide rod assembly, as a rule, is not going to be compatible with one another. So you just need to be aware of that. I've been very happy with both my Glock Gen 3 pistol and my Glock Gen 4 pistols, and I like them and I use them both. There are individuals that I've taken training classes with, people that I appreciate and respect their view on subjects, who swear by the Gen 3 pistols. Okay, so I'd have no problem with running a Gen 3 pistol, but when it comes to the ergonomics of my hand and the way in which they interface with a pistol, I feel more comfortable and prefer the Gen 4s. If you've got a big hand, then probably that's not going to matter to you. You might actually prefer the Gen 3 pistols. Glock is making both Gen 3s and Gen 4 guns, and I think that they're great pistols. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, interesting, or useful, I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel for more quality video reviews on the topics of shooting, camping, and survival gear. This is the Gear Tester signing off.